Welcome to Smoke With Me. My name is Jeremy, and today I'm going to show you how I turn a 12-pound Boston butt into some pulled pork and how you can do it just as easy in your own home on your own smoker or even in the oven or crock pot. So let's get into it. All right, so the first thing you want to do when you get your Boston butt out of the package is examine it and look for any loose pieces that may be hanging off, kind of like this little piece right here. You want to shave those off because all that's going to happen throughout the cook is those are just going to burn on you. Once you got everything shaved off and it looks pretty good, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and score our fat. And when we're scoring our fat, we don't want to get too deep into the fat. We want to bring it down about to where it meets the meat. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a hatch pattern on this and get this bad boy scored up for us. By scoring the fat, that allows your seasonings to get deep into your Boston butt and you get a better overall end product. All right, so as you can see here, we got some nice score marks coming down about to the end of the fat right there and meeting up with the meat. Again, this is just going to give us more of a surface to get our rubs and seasonings into. And today's seasoning, we're just going with some kosher salt, some black pepper, and then we're also going to use this Smokin' Hogs Barbecue Smokin' Applewood rub. I like the Applewood rub because it goes really well with pork. I'm also going to be using apple pellets. Again, apple goes really well with pork. So I'm going to go ahead and get this seasoned up. We're going to season up all sides. You don't have to really worry about over seasoning this. This is a pretty big piece of beef here, or a pretty big piece of pork. So make sure you season it generously. All right, so as you can see here, I didn't use a binder. No particular reason other than I just don't feel like using a binder and putting mustard on here. What I like to do instead is I like to just use my hand and pat it in there really good. It seems to work just as well as any binder. So there's no need for any of that mustard or mayo or anything like that. Also, make sure you get it rubbed into these crevices the best that you can. If you see a spot miss, just go ahead and hit it up. Again, you're going to want to make sure that you get all sides. Give it a nice little pat with your hand. And that should hold just fine. Our Boston butt is seasoned up on all sides. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the meter probe because it's about midnight here and this Boston butt is going to be smoking overnight. And what you want to do is you want to try to get that probe to be right in the center. And since this is such a big Boston butt, I can go straight down right in the center here. And that should give me a good reading. So now this is ready to come outside and smoke with me. I'm going to go out, fire up the smoker, and I'll see you in a couple. Before you start any long cook on your Traeger, you want to make sure that it's clean. to avoid any misfires or shutdowns throughout the cooking process, especially since we're going to be sleeping through most of this cook. So in order to do that, all you do is you take off the grill grate, you take off the drip pan that runs along, and then you take off the heat shield, you grab yourself a shop vac, you clean out any gunk on the inside, and you should be good to go. Reassemble, and now we have this up to temperature. Today or tonight we're smoking at 180. The ideal temperature I usually look for is anywhere in between 145 to 155. So that's why we're going at such a low heat tonight. We don't want to overcook this while we're sleeping. So we're also using some apple wood pellets. Again, that apple flavor goes really well with pork. I recommend it anytime you're cooking pork. So let's go ahead and get this Boston butt on the smoker, and then let's go to bed. All right, so we have our Boston butt on the smoker. I like to go with the bone side towards the fire. Just kind of helps heat that up a little bit quicker. And we're also going fat side up to help some of those juices drip down as this thing cooks. So we're gonna let this roll until the morning, a good 4 to 6 hours. If anything happens throughout the process, my meter probe should warn me and wake me up. So let's let this thing smoke. All right, we've been rolling for about 6 hours now. We've hit an internal temperature of about 115 degrees. Our bark is looking absolutely fabulous on this. Things are starting to get a little bit dry, so we're just gonna go ahead and give it a spritz of some apple cider vinegar and let this thing roll for another hour or two and take another peek to see if we need to give it another spritz or two. All right, so our Boston butt now has been running for about 11 hours. We ran at the 180 mark for the first 9 hours, and then for the last couple of hours I bumped it up to 225 to speed up the cook a little bit since I'm up now. So this thing is looking amazing. What we want to do now is just check to see if this is ready to wrap. And how I do that, obviously first by the temperature. 150 is kind of my target goal, but every Boston butt kind of smokes differently. So if you're able to come in here and give the fat a good press and it kind of sinks on in, that means that your pork belly or your pork butt is ready to wrap. So I'm gonna get this inside and show you how I wrap this up. All right, would you look at that bark? This thing looks absolutely fantastic. So now we're gonna go ahead and get this wrapped. And how I like to do that, I usually like to do it in the cast iron, but this pork butt is just too big for my cast iron. So we're gonna go with the good old aluminum foil trick. So what I have here is just one of those aluminum foil trays. And what we're gonna start out with is 1 cup of brown sugar. Place that on the bottom, just smash it around. And then we're gonna go ahead and mix in a cup of apple cider vinegar. Gonna place this in a separate bowl. And a cup of your favorite barbecue sauce. Go ahead and give those a nice little mix until they're well incorporated. And then we're just going to dump this right on top of the brown sugar. We're going to use about half of it on the bottom. We'll go with the other half on the top. Once you have that on, we're going to go ahead and go in with a stick of butter. Go with a half a stick cut the long way on each side. Next, we're going to top it with that honey. couple tablespoons or so. And now we're gonna go ahead and get our pulled pork Boston butt on top. And this time, get that meter probe out. We want to go the fat side down. Boom, just like so. And then on the top side here, I'm gonna go with, let's say about a quarter cup of brown sugar on the top. And then we're going to pour the rest of our apple cider vinegar and barbecue sauce over the top. Another stick of butter cut the long way in half on top. Top it off with a little more honey. And the last thing we're gonna do is I got some apple slices here, and we're just gonna go ahead and get them into the bottom of the pan. If we can get them to all to fit, that would be great. All right. And there we go. Now, last thing we need to do is just go ahead and get this wrapped, and then we can get it back on the smoker. And then I'm also going to take our meter probe here and put it right back down in the middle. And now it's time to go back outside and smoke with me some more. All right, so our Boston butt is back on the smoker. We're gonna let this continue to roll at 225 and braising all these liquids that we have here. We got the meter probe in there, so once it starts to hit about 200, we're gonna check it for tenderness, and once it is probe tender, this pulled pork should be ready to go. All right, so my meter probe is telling me that we've hit 193 degrees and we should remove this from the heat. But before I do that, I'm gonna do a check myself. And how I like to check my Boston butt to make sure that it is nice and tender is I just take my probe here, and if I could put this into the Boston butt with no resistance, that's telling me she's pretty well done. And what I'm feeling here is that there's absolutely no resistance. So this Boston butt is good. So we're gonna get it inside and let this rest for about an hour or so, and then we'll start pulling it apart. Well, this cook took us 16 hours, 14 hours on the smoker, 2 hours resting, and by then the guest had showed up, so we have to do a voiceover on this. But let's go ahead and take a look at how we did here. So first look here, you could see that bark. It came out just absolutely perfect. We also got that bone that's kind of sticking out there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this transferred over onto a clean tray so that way I can start pulling it apart. Now that I got it on a clean tray, you can see just how juicy that this came out. And again, that bark was absolutely perfect. And the test to every pulled pork is if you can get that bone to pull out clean on that Boston butt, then that means your pulled pork is done to perfection. And you can't get much better than this right here. All right, now let's grab a couple handfuls here and give it a good squeeze to see if it came out just as juicy and tender as it looks. And as you could tell from the squeeze and all those juices running out, it came out perfect. Now all we got to do is continue to pull this entire Boston butt apart, and then we have a tray full of pulled pork. And the last thing I like to do is just get some of those juices and just pour them over the top of this pulled pork. This pulled pork came out super juicy, tender, delicious. It's a 10 out of 10. All the guests loved it. I loved it, and I couldn't have asked for a better pulled pork smoke. If you like this recipe and want to give it a try, you can find it over on smokewithmeat.shop. And as always, if you liked what you saw here, please give us a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we look forward to seeing you on the next video.